Boker Tov, good morning.
Good Yantiv, everyone.
Welcome back to our Yom Kippur morning service. Please join us in the beautiful Psalm number 29, Adonai Oz. Adonai Oz, le'amo yitein Adonai yivarech et amo. Adonai Oz, le'amo yitein Adonai yivarech et amo.
Good Yantif, everyone. It's so good for us to be together once again, observing this very powerful day, Yom Kippur, our Day of Atonement, or some like to call it our Day of At-One-ment, because we come together on this day. We think about what's most important in our lives. We try to bring this sense of wholeness and togetherness, and we come together as a community, and even though this year we're together virtually, still we are together and praying together. We're in our beautiful sanctuary, and it's so nice to be in this space. And standing up here on the bima, you can picture what it looks like. Everyone who's been in this room before is this cupola, this raised ceiling. And the architect who designed our sanctuary tried to weave meaning into the shape of the building. And it looks kind of like a tent, if you can imagine it, sort of like a pyramid on the top with the windows all around. And it's meant to evoke the image of Ohalecha, your tents, of a tent. Thy dwelling places, O Israel, the Matovu that we're about to sing. And this is our what beautiful dwelling place where we come together to pray. So let us sing Matovu Ohalecha Yaakov. How goodly are thy tents, O Jacob, thy dwelling places, O Israel.
We're on page 20.
Ohalecha
We continue on page 21. Sometimes I feel rotten inside, empty, phony, and no one else knows how bad I feel. They think I'm fine, doing well, successful even. But I know all the times I've failed, the people I disappointed, the mitzvot I avoided. What hope can I have for the new year? I shouldn't even make new promises, seeing how my efforts in the past failed. Resolutions soon faded away. Bad habits remain unbroken. Good intentions remain unrealized. I can make no new vows. I can make no new efforts. I give up. And then, last night, during the Kol Nidre, I heard your plea. Get up! I only commanded 1 day for afflicting your soul. I gave you 10 days for repentance, for turning over a new leaf in the book of life. Now you will have 50 weeks to be renewed. Even if you don't have faith in yourself, I have faith in you. Get up off the floor. Get up quickly. Falling isn't the worst sin. Staying on the floor is. So those who are able, get up.
Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem, Kevod Malchuto, Le'olam Va'ed.
This is our promise from deep in our hearts. Commitment to learning, to doing This is our promise, from deep in our heart, committed to learning, to doing our part, to be righteous, try to be righteous, try to be true. This is our promise. We make it to you. This is our promise. We make it to you.
Yada die 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 yada die 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 yada die 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 yada die 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 yada die 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 yada die 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 mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai mi chamocha nehedar b'kodesh nora tehilot osef elel osef elel shira chadasha shebechu geolim l'shimcha al svat hayam yachad kulam hodu vehim lechu ve'amru Adonai yimloch le'olam le'olam vaed Adonai yimloch le'olam le'olam vaed Yada die 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 yada die 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 yada die 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 yada die 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 yada die 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 yada die 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 Tzur Yisrael Kuma be'ezrat Yisrael Uvdechnu mecha Yehuda ve'Yisrael Go aleinu Adonai tzvaot shemo Kedosh Yisrael Baruch atah Adonai Ga'a Yisrael Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi agita hilatecha Adonai open my lips that my mouth may declare your praise Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu Ve'imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Leah Elohei Rachel Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor ve'hanora El Elyon Gomer Hasadim Tovim Ve'konei Hakol V'zocher Chasdei Avot ve'imachot U'mevii geula Livnei v'neihem Leman
Shemo be'ahava. Zochreinu l'chaim, melech hafetz b'chaim, v'chadveinu b'sefer ha'chaim, lemancha Elohim chayim. Melech Ozer u'Moshiach Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham be'ezrat Sarah.
Amen. Today we see ourselves as we truly are. In a few moments, we will chant Unatana tokef, an awesome prayer on an awe-filled day. How do we review the record of our deeds from this past year? How do we evaluate the quality of our existence? We cannot blame our conduct on forces beyond our control. We are fully responsible for the quality of our life, for making the most of it or the least of it. A great shofar is sounded, and a still, small voice is heard. Unatana tokef is chanted as the book of life stands open.
Unatana tokef, Unatana tokef, Unatana tokef, Unatana tokef, Unatana tokef, Unatana tokef, Kedushat hayom.
On Rosh Hashanah, it is written. On Yom Kippur, it is sealed. How many will leave this life, and how many will be born into it? Who will live, and who will die? Whose life will reach its natural end, and whose will be cut short? Who by water, and who by fire? Who by sword, and who by beast? Who by hunger, and who by thirst? Who by quake, and who by plague? Who by choking, and who by stoning? Who will rest, and who will wander? Who will be tranquil, and who will be torn? Who will be at peace, and who will be tormented? Who will be raised high, and who will be brought low? Who will prosper, and who will be impoverished? Utshuva, turning inward to face oneself. Utfilah, entering into prayer and contemplation. Utsadakah, giving to the needy as justice requires. Ma'avirin et roa hagazera, together these things diminish the harshness of the decree.
Page 27. Rosh Hashanah, Yikatevu, Uvyom Som Kippur, Yechatevu, Rosh Hashanah, Yikatevu, Uvyom Som Kippur, Yechatevu, Kamaya.
Continue on page 28, and those who are able, please rise.
נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך, וקרא זה ואמר, קדוש, קדוש, קדוש.
Adonai Tzibaot, Melech kol haaretz, kevodo.
Adir, Adirenu, Adonai, Adonenu, Mahadir, Shimcha b'chol haaretz.
Baruch kevod Adonai Mimkomo. Echad hu Eloheinu, hu Avinu, hu Malkeinu, hu Moshiachenu, vehu Yashvienu, berachamav le'nei kol chai. Ani Adonai Elohechem, Yimloch Adonai le'olam, Elohai Yisrael, Ledor vador, Hallelujah.
לדור ודור נגיד גוד לך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, בשבחך אלוהינו, מפנו לא ימוש, לעולם ועד.
Baruch atah Adonai, HaMelech HaKadosh. You are asked to stand and consider the harm you've caused, the respect you've withheld, the anger misspent, the fear spread, the earnestness displayed in the service of prestige and sensibility, all the callous, cruel, stubborn, joyless sins in your alphabet of woe, so that you might be forgiven. You are asked to believe in the spark of your divinity, in the purity of the words of your mouth and the memories of your heart. You are asked for this one day to starve your body so your soul can feast on faith and adoration. You are asked to forgive the past and remember the dead, to gaze across the desert in your heart towards Jerusalem, to separate the sacred from the profane, and to be as numerous as the sands and the stars of heaven, to believe that no matter what you have done to yourself and others, morning will come and the mountain of night will fade, to believe for these few precious moments in the utter sweetness of your life.
Hi da di 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 da da di 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 da da di di di. Ashamnu,
Ashamnu,
Bagadnu,
Bagadnu,
Gazanu,
Gazanu,
Dibarnu Dofi,
Dibarnu Dofi,
Hi da di 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 da da di 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 da da di di. He'evinu,
He'evinu,
Vehirshanu,
Vehirshanu,
Zadnu,
Zadnu,
Hamasnu,
Hamasnu,
Tafalnu Shaker,
Tafalnu Shaker,
Hi da di 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 da da di 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 da da di di. Ya'atznu Ra,
Ya'atznu Ra,
Kizavnu,
Kisavnu,
Latznu,
Latznu,
Maradnu,
Aradnu,
Ni'atznu,
Ni'atznu,
Sararnu,
Sararnu,
Avinu,
Avinu,
Pashanu,
Pashanu,
Sararnu,
Sapranu,
Kishinu Oref,
Kishinu Oref,
I da dai 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 da da dai 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 da 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 dai dai dai. Rashanu,
Rashanu,
Shichatnu,
Shichatnu,
Tiavnu,
Tiavnu,
Tainu,
Tainu,
Titanu,
Titanu,
I da dai 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 da da dai 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 da da dai dai dai.
Please be seated. Al chet shechatanu lefanecha, we sin against you when we sin against ourselves. For our failures of truth, Adonai, we ask forgiveness. For pretending to emotions we do not feel. For using up sins of others to excuse our own. For denying our responsibility for our own misfortunes. For refusing to admit our share in the troubles of others. For condemning in our children the faults we tolerate in ourselves. For passing judgment without knowledge of the facts. For remembering the price of things but forgetting their value. For teaching our children everything but the meaning of life. For loving our egos better than truth. Al chet shechatanu lefanecha, we sin against you when we sin against ourselves. For our failures of love, Adonai, we ask forgiveness. For using people as stepping stones to advancement. For confusing love and lust. For withholding love to control those we claim to love. For hiding from others behind an armor of mistrust. For treating with arrogance people weaker than ourselves. For condescending towards those whom we regard as inferiors. For shunting aside those whose age is an embarrassment to us. For giving ourselves the fleeting pleasures of inflicting lasting hurts. For cynicism, which eats away our faith in the possibility of love. Al chet shechatanu lefanecha, we sin against you when we sin against ourselves. For our failures of justice, Adonai, we ask forgiveness for us and all humanity. For the sin of false and deceptive advertising. For the sin of keeping the poor in the chains of poverty. For the sin of racial hatred and prejudice. For the sin of denying its existence. For the sin of withholding justice from the world.
For the sin
of using violence to maintain our power. For the sin of using violence to bring about change. For the sin of separating ends from means. For the sin of threatening the survival of life on the planet. For the sin of filling the air with poisons. For the sin of making our waters unfit to drink and unsafe for fish. For the sin of pouring toxic chemicals upon trees and soil. For the sin of war. For the sin of aggressive war. For the sin of appeasing aggressors. For the sin of building weapons of mass destruction. For the sin of obeying criminal orders. For the sin of lacking civic courage. For the sin of silence and indifference. For running to do evil, but limping to do good. For all these sins, forgive us, pardon us, grant us atonement. Ve'akulam Eloha selihot selah lanu mechalanu kapelanu ve'akulam Eloha selihot
continue with Avinu Malkeinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, Hanenu Vaneinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Hanenu Vaneinu, Ki Emanu Masi. Aseh Imanu, Tzedaka v'chesed. Aseh Imanu, Tzedaka v'chesed, ve'hoshienu. Aseh Imanu, Tzedaka v'chesed. Aseh Imanu, Tzedaka v'chesed, ve'hoshienu.
Avinu Malkeinu,
Avinu Malkeinu,
Hanenu Vaneinu.
Hanenu Vaneinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Hanenu Vaneinu, Ki Ein
Manu Masi.
It was just 10 days ago that we heard the sad news about the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. It was the eve of Rosh Hashanah, well into the beginning of services on the East Coast, and only a few hours before ours began. And though we knew of her poor health, it still came as such a shock. Her death is not just a sad loss for the Jewish community, but for our entire nation. She was, in spite of her short stature, a towering figure in American jurisprudence and a source of great inspiration for so many. I can't think of any other member of the Supreme Court who reached her level of fame, with multiple movies and books dedicated to telling her story, and T-shirts and every conceivable object of memorabilia bearing her likeness. Lindy even has one of those RBG bobbleheads sitting on her dresser. Justice Ginsburg was a superstar, the notorious RBG. But her fame was not just about being a celebrity. It was truly earned. Her imprint on the court and her advocacy for some of the most important issues of our day, gender equality, LGBTQ rights, minority voting rights, to name just a few, made a deep impact on our country and transformed for the better the lives of millions of people. I am fairly certain you have heard or read more than one story about Justice Ginsburg this week, and many of you have seen the movies, so you already know a lot about her. But I thought it would be appropriate today, and I hope inspiring, for us to consider the Jewish teachings and the Jewish ideas that are personified in her life and work. She was not religiously observant, but by all accounts, she definitely saw the world through the prism of her Jewish upbringing, and her views almost always mirrored the fundamentals of our tradition. She talked about that often and never tried to hide her faith and identity. Not that she ever could with a name like Ginsburg. She was definitely among the most highly celebrated members of the tribe. So, an obvious starting point for this journey is Judaism's ever-present obsession with justice. Tzedek, tzedek, tirdof, says the Torah. Justice, justice shall you pursue. Need I say more? Justice Ginsburg had a plaque hanging in her Supreme Court office that proudly displayed these words. This powerful commandment was the passion coursing through every legal brief Justice Ginsburg ever wrote, every position, and every cause she took on. In her confirmation hearing, when Senator Edward Kennedy asked her about her faith, she said, "I am a judge born, raised, and proud of being a Jew. The demand for justice runs through the entirety of Jewish tradition. I hope in my years on the bench, I will have the strength and the courage to remain constant in the service of that demand." You know, the rabbis of the commentary question the Torah's repetition of the word tzedek. Why does the Torah say, tzedek, tzedek tirdof, justice, justice shall you pursue? And they answer that justice is so vital, so important that it merits repetition for emphasis. Furthermore, they explain, tzedek, justice, must always be pursued with tzedek, in just ways. There are no shortcuts, no end runs, no perversions of justice done in the guise of pursuing justice. From all I've read about Justice Ginsburg, this sensitivity was very much a reflection of what motivated her. What was fair and right for one person in her mind could not come at the expense of an injustice being done for someone else. And from where did this sensitivity come? Well, she was not a scholar of Torah, but she did grow up in a Jewish family with Jewish values, and she felt many times the sting of anti-Semitism. As the child and grandchild of European Jewish immigrants, the Holocaust was not just something she learned about in a textbook. It was up close and personal, part of her family history. She saw the evil done by nations that lacked a moral core. I dissent. Yep. That's the second Jewish concept we need to talk about that Justice Ginsburg embraced. Even made popular, I dissent. You might think I'm referring here to the idea that Jews are stubborn and strong-willed, a stiff-necked people, or that we are outspoken and never afraid to speak our minds. Well, you could say all these things because they are true. And you could apply them to Justice Ginsburg, although she's famous for disagreeing without being disagreeable. One of my favorite RBG quotes is, "Fight for the things you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you." But she never backed down. And she never shied away from expressing unpopular ideas or from taking on proactive positions that bucked the status quo. She was always challenging the "we've always done it this way" mentality. But I'm thinking more specifically of Judaism's openness to asking questions and its healthy attitude about dissent. We are a tradition that values questioning and a faith that encourages looking at issues from every possible angle, from our theology to our laws to our ritual practices. All of it is open for questioning. We never ask anyone to check their brain at the door. If you look at the Talmud, there is a lively debate on almost every page between rabbis who had different ideas and different interpretations. And just like the proceedings of the Supreme Court, both the majority and the minority opinions are always included. They are a part of the official record. Justice Ginsburg, over her many years on the bench, often voiced the dissenting views of the minority opinion, and she saw that as an extremely important part of her work. She knew that dissenting opinions needed to be voiced and understood and not silenced. Listen, in her own words, to what she has to say about it. Dissents speak to a future age. It's not simply to say my colleagues are wrong and I would do it this way, But the greatest dissents do become court opinions, and gradually over time, their views become the dominant view. So that's the dissenters' hope, that they are writing not for today, but for tomorrow. Whether she realized it or not, I think that's a very Jewish point of view. There is a well-known saying, Elu ve'elu, divrei Elohim chayim, that both the majority and the minority points of view are the words of the living God, which means that no one holds a monopoly on truth. What is commonly accepted or believed in one day and age might be seen very differently in the future. Just look at how our Jewish faith has evolved through the centuries. It's never been static. And consider how much our country and our world has changed just in the 27 years that Justice Ginsburg has served on the court. She was in the room where it happened. She was a part of the deliberative body that allowed those changes to be reflected in the laws and statutes of our country. B'Tselem Elohim, in God's image. The idea that all God's children, regardless of gender or race or religious creed, all are equal. This is the third Jewish mandate that I believe animated the work of Justice Ginsburg. The concept comes from us from the opening chapters of the Torah, but is also reflected in our nation's founding document, the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. It's a well-known fact that at the time of its writing, our founding fathers narrowly defined the word man to refer to only one gender. Women, the other half of all humanity, were not yet accorded the right to vote or to own land, or to enjoy a host of privileges accorded every male citizen of our country. It took the women's suffrage movement over many years of struggle to initiate the change, and it took a courageous and extremely smart and uniquely talented woman, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, to open the doors of equality that much wider. Decades before she became a justice, when she was counsel for the ACLU, Justice Ginsburg successfully argued several cases before the Supreme Court that changed the way law sees gender for both men and women. Once she was appointed to the court, she applied that same concept in her deliberations over immigrant rights and marriage equality, and I'm certain the list goes on and on, judging our laws for both their fairness and for how they recognize and uphold the dignity of every human being. I've only given a brief snapshot today of how Justice Ginsburg's life work was influenced by her Jewish identity. And I imagine it could be a great thesis topic, if it hasn't already, for some rabbinic or PhD student to dig into more deeply. It would also make for an interesting book, and there's enough there, I'm sure, to fill several volumes. But as we sit in judgment today on this Yom Kippur before God and before our own conscience, thinking about the values that guide our actions and imagining those scales of justice, weighing our deeds, we should aspire to follow the example she set. Ruth Bader Ginsburg will, no doubt, be remembered among the great Jewish women in history. Sarah and Miriam, Esther and Devorah, Hannah Senesh and Golda Meir, and the yet-to-be-discovered Jewish women who will lead with their hearts and with their discerning minds while channeling the wisdom that has been passed down through the generations of our people. Zecher Tzedek Livracha. May the memory of this righteous woman be remembered for a blessing, and may her passion for justice inspire us as we tackle the pressing issues of our day. May our dissent be just as vigorous, and may our resolve be just as notorious. Ken Yehi Ratzon. May it be God's will. Amen. Thank you to everyone who participated in our service. Thank you for coming and joining us. We're going to take a short break, and we will continue at 11:10 with our Torah service. Good Yontif.
Good Yom Tov.